Hello everyone, and recently Games Workshop released their annual report. This is something that I rarely cover, however, since the release of Old World, I feel like it's quite important to talk about because there is a few mentions and there is a look towards the possible future, not just for the Old World, but also stuff like the Amazon TV show and so on. So let's discuss. There's a few things to talk about here. The first thing is the mention of the main settings, because there's two primary universes, we've already known this, the fantasy one and the space fantasy one. Interestingly enough, the Old World is now listed there as like the main 4 games that they do, which is really curious. I always thought that Old World was going to be, at least for the time being, a side piece, you know, get the nostalgia money in, but it looks like it is selling very well. We can see that with loads of stuff going out of stock very quickly, and Grand Cafe seems to have performed very well through the different shops that I've spoken to. Not only that, but we do see here that Warhammer the Old World is referred to as its first incarnation in 1983, so yeah, Warhammer Fantasy, Warhammer Old World, this is something that we've been noticing lately with books getting repackaged. That's just the new name for Warhammer Fantasy, it seems. So technically, first edition is 9th. I know, some people are going to get mad at that comment, but it's good to see that, interestingly enough, Warhammer the Old World is over Age of Sigmar. I'm not sure what that means. It's pretty odd, isn't it? But it could just be because like Old World is new and it's selling very well at the moment. I don't think Age of Sigmar is doing badly. Yes, the edition launch box was doing kind of bad, but to be fair, when it comes to Age of Sigmar, the launch box editions aren't really good. You know, it's more the other packs afterwards. I have no interest in the Stormcast. Maybe that's just me. It looks like Games Workshop has wants to expand into the Middle East, into Europe and Asia more. This is something that we've all kind of seen, especially with the Asia expansion with Grand Cafe. They specifically mentioned China and India. I imagine that the China stuff is going very well. The India thing is actually quite curious, considering that, well, we do have an India adjacent like faction in Warhammer Fantasy and the Old World in the Kingdoms of Ind. That's something that a lot of people have been very curious about, and every now and then it does get some mentions in lore. So it does seem like that might potentially bode well. For the other settings, I'm not 100% too sure, but as you guys are aware, I'm more interested in Old World than I am anything else, and it would be great to finally get, you know, the Land of 1,000 Gods as a playable faction. This is something which I could see expanding further. In this report also they do mention that the Japanese section of their sales does very well. I'm very curious to see what that kind of goes for in the future. We do know that Games Workshop have said that, well, right now, you know, they're just kind of fleshing out the world and there's no plans at the moment for Nippon and whatever, but you never know because they've said no plans for Cafe and then a few months later Cafe was here. In fact, in Japan, retail sales are up quite dramatically, so it seems, and to be honest, after seeing like the social media aspects of like the Japanese cafe and so on, I can see why their marketing is really on point. So I do wonder if they would look at that and say, hey, you know, Nippon might be a good idea here. When it comes to stuff like Warhammer Fantasy, people are incentivized to buy their cultures represented, so it would be kind of cool to see that there. There's a further comment regarding the Amazon deal where they've said that, yeah, they can't really talk about anything just yet because the contract has basically been locked in and now they're just kind of ironing out extra details. It is a long-term partnership, so there will be a lot of stuff coming, but there won't be any news in the short term. These things are going to take a few years to actually get out, so no trailers maybe just yet. Maybe a teaser, but at this point, I guess they're still probably deciding where to start off first. This will likely stop all the doomers. Well, let's be honest, it's not going to stop them, who keep going, oh yeah, the Amazon deal is dead, the Amazon deal is dead, Games Workshop, wow. Yep. That's how it usually is on Twitter. The video games comment is quite interesting. They've said that Space Marine 2 has set a new benchmark, which, I mean, yeah, is expected. It's a very big title. And that could potentially mean that smaller studios will have a bit of a harder time to get access to the Warhammer IP, which in some cases might not be a bad thing. They're looking further at expanding, especially as they say Space Marine 3 is coming, and there have been new games that have been announced, like Dark Heresy, Bolt Gun 2, Dawn of War Definitive Edition. So I would expect that their IP licensing is going to start expanding further and further over the coming years, as long as they can get some sort of assurance or they feel like the project is going to work. PC seems a small scope for them, but I do wonder how that's going to go, because obviously Rogue Trader's been doing quite well. Dark Heresy is going to be a big one, and a lot of people are kind of excited for the prospect of a potential Total War 40k. The rumors are getting louder and louder, but nothing is really there. People are expecting the announcement of that later this year with the celebration of Creative Assembly and stuff, so who knows, who knows. Hopefully it does come to pass and we see it being the big title that everyone's expecting, but we're going to have to wait and see that. I do find it very weird when they mention smaller brands. They just mention Necromunda, Blood Bowl, and the Lord of the Rings. There's a few others, obviously Warcry, everyone's kind of worried about that one, even though they're going to be getting rules, I believe, for the Chaos Dwarf release, or Chaos Dwarden, whatever they're called now. And obviously Underworlds, which Underworlds is a pretty damn good game. I enjoy Underworlds. It's one of those Warhammer pub games that you can just kind of play anywhere. It's weird that Lord of the Rings is considered like a smaller title for them. Obviously it's their licensed property, so it's not that they're making all the money there. But as far as I was aware, you know, Lord of the Rings seems to be doing quite well. Maybe the newer edition wasn't too good. I know it was a bit weird though, because it was just kind of like set in a weird point of the timeline rather than, you know, the big Lord of the Rings stuff. Also, if anyone from Games Workshop is listening, when are we getting Mordheim? That would be great. That would make a lot of money, I think. Lastly, and I don't like to get into the political side of things, but we do have to talk about it, the tariffs that have come into place. It seems that Games Workshop are basically going to take the hit alongside the usual price increase that is going to be coming, but that's kind of expected. They always go up in price around this time of year anyway. But this is actually quite good because a older Games Workshop would have probably increased the prices just to reflect the tariffs. Warhammer is definitely going to get a little bit more expensive over there, depending on the retailers and stuff like that. But they're referencing it as the new normal, so they're just kind of trying to go through it and do their best. Which, yeah, I mean, this is good from Games Workshop. This is surprising, actually, more than anything else. And that's pretty much it. Yes, there is a bunch of financial stuff, and you can get that easily from the Games Workshop investor page. Everything kind of looks as expected. It is nice to see Old World kind of at the front there. Hopefully, this does mean that we'll see a lot more expansion. We do know that, obviously, there's some stuff on the way. That's the thing that I'm most interested in. Video games, you know, that's more up to the developer of the video games than it is Games Workshop when, you know, if the game does well or not. We've seen that many times over. But yeah, it's good to see. It's good growth overall. The more money that they make, the better, I guess, you know, if they keep investing back into the settings. Hopefully we don't get the same issue what happened with Warhammer Fantasy, but so far everything looks very good for the old world. The Amazon stuff, again, it's going to take a while, but that's kind of expected. One thing I do find very curious is that there wasn't really any highlights when it came to this report. Generally, there's like, oh yeah, you know, we launched this, and this has gone very well, and so on. But yeah, I guess it's more generalized. Weird, right? But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Start a bit of discussion. I just wanted to talk about this today because it's good news, I think. I'm not a financial expert, but I do like to keep tabs on Games Workshop because, well, I'm very emotionally and obviously financially invested into this setting. So yeah, have a good one, guys. I'll see you all again very soon.